Good evening and welcome to Viewpoint. Tonight we look at occupational cancer. Sadly, cancer is a very common condition. Statistics suggest that more than 1 in 3 of us will develop some form of cancer during our lifetime. This week, a local conference sought to raise awareness of the cancer-causing agents that exist in our places of work. According to the Institution of Occupational Safety and Health, IOSH, occupational cancers are a leading cause of work-related death worldwide. But are you protecting yourself against the most dangerous health risk that you face at work?
Well, the first thing is to find out what are the cancerous agents, what are the carcinogens. And there's lots of carcinogens. The most natural one you have in Gibraltar is the sun.
I wouldn't say there's a healthy tan. A tan is not healthy. A tan is a sign of skin damage.
It's important that people understand that we have a very high chance of getting a type of skin cancer, so we need to try and avoid it.
I don't think anybody's really thought of making workers, for example, wear long sleeves in the summer or sun protection of any other kind. It's not something that we've really thought about and worked at. So I think in that sense, the topic that we've chosen has been extremely useful, and it's something that we need to develop now.
Cancer is not a single disease with a single cause. An individual's risk of developing cancer is influenced by a combination of factors, including personal habits such as smoking, genetics, personal characteristics such as ethnicity and age, and exposure to carcinogens in the environment. And tonight we're focusing on the last one, exposure to cancer-causing agents in our everyday lives, and specifically at work. And because of Gibraltar's climate, we're focusing on UV radiation from sunlight, which increases the risk of skin cancers. Viewers might find some images disturbing.
Because of research and because of experience and nations sharing their expertise, we know a lot about solar cancer now and how radiation cancer is caused. And we actually now know that you don't have to be directly exposed to the sun for the cancers to be caused. Now in Gibraltar, you've got a lot of sun, so it's a very high risk for the workforce. So once you know that it's a high risk, then you can start taking the preventative measures. And the first measure is to make sure that people are aware of the danger. And this is where the education comes in. Once you make them aware of the danger, the beautiful thing about that is that they'll learn this at work. You don't keep learning at work just at work, it then goes into the home. So of course the workers get to know about radiation cancer from the sun, they take the message home, that gets to their families. So what people are doing to help prevent the workforce from becoming ill actually spreads out into the community. And then the community starts to take protective steps as well, because why wouldn't you once you know what the dangers are? The other danger then is to make sure that organisations have in place measures for detecting the cancers when they start. So part of making the workers aware is making sure that they know what the signs and symptoms are. And of course some of the more recent research findings, especially from the UK, they used to have a whole body examination to have a look for moles and things that might have become cancerous. Now they actually know that if they look at a person's right arm, count the number of moles, they can actually detect which people are going to be more susceptible to the effects of the sun. So it's a nice, easy test. Once you've identified those who are more susceptible, they become the target population. Yes, the others are still monitored, they're still watched, but you can actually identify those who are most likely at risk. And cancer doesn't have a target. Irrespective of whether you're male or female, it'll attack both genders just as equally. So it's important that you get the message over in a way that's important for the ladies, for the gents, and then made simpler for the children. The thing with giving the same message to the children though is, children can become very, very frightened, and if they become frightened they don't take the message on board. So when you give the message to the workers, give them it in a way that allows them to take that message home to the children without frightening the children, because children are very good at picking messages up and then living those messages. And once they start to live those messages, it becomes ingrained for life. So what you're instituting is a life-changing style where they will choose the right choices. They'll use the sun cream, they'll use the clothing that will help protect their skin. they'll become aware that at certain times there's higher risk, so they'll wear the clothing that's more appropriate. And if once they start to look after their bodies, it doesn't just look at healthy lifestyle from not being in the sun, because some foods can cause cancer, some diets can cause cancer. So they'll hopefully then children will start to look at lifestyle choices, you know, food, exercise, everything like this, because it all contributes to good health. But it all starts at work. But that should be supported by the appropriate messaging from the education system as well. Because again, it's like any message. If you only use one vehicle for the message, it tends to become isolated. Whereas if it's consistent and it's targeted and it comes from different approaches and different venues, children will listen. Children aren't daft, and children want to have a healthy lifestyle nowadays. So it all contributes to this healthier population.
Is it harder, if I may, with adults who might be set in their ways and
Yes.
you know might have grown up used to spending endless hours in the sun, for example? How do you try and get through to them that perhaps, you know, their lifestyle choice might need revisiting? Well,
with people who've got a set lifestyle, it's very difficult. So it's like it's like a tap that's continuously dripping. You need to give the message consistently in small doses and repeatedly. And the best way I can explain it is that back in the United Kingdom, back in the 1960s, drink driving was accepted. It was a norm. It was a socially accepted behaviour, unless of course you went and killed somebody, and then it became slightly different. But generally speaking, it was socially acceptable to get in a car after having had a drink. Because of the advertising and because of the messaging that's come out through the various media sources, it's now completely socially unacceptable to get in a car after you've had a drink. Now that's individuals taking on those messages, but the thing is those individuals are reinforcing that message with other people, and they actually tell them that it's not socially acceptable to do this, that it's totally irresponsible. Now, again, this is the same as the solar message. The more people that reinforce the message, the more that people are likely to listen. And if people set an example by saying, it's a real hot day, the sun's out, I'm going to cover up to the maximum, then it starts to have an effect, because peer pressure is a very powerful messaging tool. And once it becomes accepted that you protect your body from the sun, then it becomes a way of life, because it becomes a second choice. It becomes ingrained in the subconscious that, okay, today's not so sunny, I still need to be careful, but I don't have to be as careful. Today I'm going to be out in the sun, I'm out all day, I need to think about protecting my skin.
Well, we had a threefold presentation yesterday based on clinical practice, health promotion and patient perspective. So we kind of targeted the areas on all three fronts. My particular aim was to target the aim of health promotion as in preventing conditions that can be prevented, in focus particularly to skin cancer and sun safety. And that's what my topic was yesterday, based on statistics given by the clinicians and clinical practice in Gibraltar. I felt that it was important to tell the people how important it is not to think lightly of sun damage that can be caused when we're unaware of risk factors, you know, on day-to-day basis. Exposure through glass windows in cars, in the offices, exposure to sun when you're dark-skinned, and not being cautious of the importance of using sun protection, sun hats, you know, taking the regular breaks to put on your sun cream. Awareness in schools with school children, awareness on the building site. When they have the cap, they wear their cap quite protectively, but they don't use the sun cream. And if the caps do they have flaps at the back of the caps? Small instances like that. Parks, are they sheltered enough? Our healthcare facilities locally, we have open areas, but do we have shaded open areas? Any kind of public area, is there enough shade for people to go to? Because every time you expose yourself to sun, you don't see the bad rays, you see the good rays, and you like the sun, you like the warmth, but you don't see the UV and the UV A and B rays that are actually penetrating your skin. And obviously cumulative exposure causes bigger damage.
I think it's the same as what Dio was saying. You need to have a look at where you're working. On the building sites, it's not only the hard hat, they should be putting something round. And Wendy in her talk was actually talking about the fact that we should be focusing more on the Australian guidelines. Our climate here is much more like theirs, and they have legislation in place. And if you're on the beach in Australia and you don't put sun cream on, they can throw you off the beach.
Is that a measure that you'd like to see introduced here?
I'd like somebody to be on the beach, which we have discussed with these sun campaigns that we started a couple of years ago, of doing something about getting some people to provide some free sun cream for those that forget it.
I would say that just be cautious. If you are going to be exposed to the sun, you need to be protected regardless of season and time and place, because you could, like I said before, you're in a queue in a car or standing in a queue, and you could be exposed to the sun. Even in the winter, the sun doesn't seem so strong, but the rays are still penetrating your skin. So what you need to be cautious about is making sure you have sun protection in the way of cream. You cover areas of the body that are normally not thought about, like the neck and the back of the ears. So you have that adequate hat coverage. Wear long-sleeved cool clothing instead of exposing and getting and looking and vying for a tan. And not also one important factor that needs to be stressed is a tanning bed is not safe at all. The rays are not safe for your body. So that's my message.
Everyday life, we walk up and down town, we should be using sun cream when we're out, we need to wear hats, we need to protect ourselves. I admit I was one of these people that before I did dermatology 12 years ago, I would smother myself with baby oil to get the best tan there could be. I don't go to the beach anymore. Any colour on my skin is just from going through town, and I always use the factor 50. And we advise people to start young, teach your young. If you're young, learn, we can reduce the genetic risk we can't do, but the rest we can reduce for the future generations. And it's going to take us a good 50 years before we're going to be able to reduce those numbers.
That long?
That long, because we're talking about generations.
In the UK, everyone looks forward to the good weather and some sunshine. However, with sunny weather comes the risk of sunburn and potentially skin cancer. Skin cancer is by far the most common type of cancer in the UK, with figures from Cancer Research estimating that there are as many as 100,000 new cases each year. Around 50% of work-related cases of the most common type of skin cancer are in the construction industry. The scale of the problem within construction has prompted the making of this film that will give you the facts about skin cancer caused by the sun and suggest some ways of minimising your risk when working outside in the summer months. If detected early, there is a 95% success rate in treating this type of cancer, a far better rate than for most other types of cancer. However, if left to develop, some types of skin cancer can spread via lymph nodes and into the immune system to other organs within the body, causing secondary cancers. In the most severe cases, skin cancer can be fatal.
The No Time to Lose campaign for IOSH, it depicts the 10 worst cancers that we've detected in the UK, and some of them are going to be shared with the same in Gibraltar. We have a problem with solar radiation in the UK. Well, when you come to Gibraltar, that solar radiation is multiplied by at least a factor of 10. You've a lovely climate here, lots of sun. So we've actually developed the rules that you need to how to protect your workers. So using proper creams, using the barrier creams that you can get to cut out the UV radiation, by making sure people work as far as they can in a secluded area where there's shade. If you can't do that and they've still got to be out in the sun, giving them maximum skin protection through the appropriate clothing. And that clothing might have to be different, because if somebody's working heavily, you know, strenuous work, they're going to sweat. So you can't put them in the normal clothing that they might work in other temperatures. Give them the lightweight clothing that still covers the skin. Remind them that every so often they need to go back in the shade and let the bodies cool down, because out in the sun it's not the solar radiation that's the danger, there's also the heat stress that comes from that, and then there's also dehydration. So when you look at one type of ill health, it usually affects other types. So keeping them hydrated, keeping them cool, and then giving them shade to work in. Where you can't do that, then you can reduce the amount of hours that people spend in the sun. You can give them 40-minute periods, say, to get a job done, then go back in the shade and get some protection.
Some people are more likely than others to develop skin cancer. If you have lots of moles or freckles, light-coloured eyes, or have red or fair hair, then you will be more at risk because people with any of these characteristics typically burn easily. Irrespective of your skin type, staying in the sun until your skin goes pink or red is a physical sign that you have already caused damage to your skin. Repeatedly letting this happen can lead to you developing skin cancer. People sometimes assume that bright sunshine is the cause of skin cancer. However, what actually causes it is ultraviolet or UV radiation that comes from the sun.
On top of all that, getting people to recognise what these dangerous changes are to the skin that might mean A, the skin's been damaged, or B, they've actually started a form of cancer, because there's 3 different types. And again, it depends which type of cancer is how dangerous it is. So making them aware that what changes are happening to my skin, what do I need to be really looking out for, because that's personal. Now, on top of that, you also need some supervision and supervisors going around and saying, hey, come on lads, you know what the rules are with the sun, you know how dangerous it is, making sure that they do take notice of these rules and put them into action. But the supervisors can act as a second check as well, because they can watch the workers, and if they are exposing the skin, a quick visual check just to make sure that nothing's happening.
What are they looking out for then?
And they're looking for changes to the skin, especially around areas where they've had moles or other types of problems. And it doesn't have to be severe, it doesn't have to be intrusive either. And again, when they notice if they do notice a change that the worker hasn't noticed, it's not the hard line, it's having the quiet word. Have you been and had a look at that? Have you had it looked at? Do you think you ought, and just making the suggestions, the prompts that makes the worker think, hang on, he's concerned about this. Maybe I ought to be a bit more concerned. Maybe I ought to go and see that, just to get it checked out to be safe.
If I'm an employer and I'm worried about making sure that I put the right conditions in place for my employees to protect them against these risks, what steps do I need to take?
Well, a few top tips, depending on what kind of employer, what kind of a firm it is. If you have office workers and you have windows, it would be nice to have the protective films on the glass, so that at least people are protected if they're at a desk near the window, or otherwise rearrange the office furniture. If you're in a school, make sure the children are aware they have to wear the hats and they have the sun cream provided, so they're covering their neck and back of the ears. The same at a building site, just as it's stipulated mandatory to wear a hard hat at the building site. It's also important that they use sun cream and take regular breaks away from the sun. So these are important things that need to be inculcated in the business.
Would you advocate sort of wearing sun protection cream throughout the year?
Throughout the year. The only time you're probably safe is when it's pouring with rain like it was yesterday.
And obviously this is not something that most Gibraltarians practice.
No, we live in a sunny climate, the beach is very tempting. Sun, to a degree, has health benefits. We've got to be careful that we don't become like UK and get rickets coming back. We do need to have sunlight for its vitamin D, but make sure that you do it in a protective way. Keep out the main hours of the sun during the summer, especially between 11 and 4, and the little bits of sunlight that you have, make sure you're protected. Long sleeves, protect your arms.
Cancer research advises that the main periods of risk in the UK are the months April to mid-September, with the highest levels of UV rays being present between 11 AM and 3 PM. UV rays penetrate skin cells, causing sunburn, skin ageing and DNA damage. It's this damage that can cause you to develop skin cancer. UV rays are invisible and cannot be felt on the skin. The heat of the sun that you feel comes from infrared rays. A common misconception is that the risk only exists when there is bright sunshine. This is wrong. UV rays are still present on a cloudy or overcast day. 30 to 40% of UV rays will still penetrate through dense cloud cover, and up to 80% if only half the sky is covered in cloud. UV rays are also present from reflections, not just from metal roofs, coverings or glass, but 5 to 10% off the surface of water, 15% off sand and 10% off concrete surfaces. So you may be exposed even if you think you are in the shade.
The nasty one is the malignant melanoma, and with the malignant melanoma you do see changes. That's the really nasty one and that's the killer. The other two are more scarring, the more disfiguring. Although you do see changes to the skin, one of them's constant, it has to be dealt with by surgery and then reconstructive plastic surgery. However, that has an effect on people psychologically as well as physiologically, because if they've got this disfigurement on their face, other people see it. It affects their well-being of how they think about themselves, how they see themselves. And I know of people who've had disfiguring illnesses through accidents, fortunately not through any form of cancer, but through accidents. And they go to great lengths to try and hide things. They'll always sit in one position so people look at the good side instead of the bad side. Or they'll hold the head to one side, or they'll hold the head down depending on where the disfigurement is. And it causes them lots of problems about their own self-esteem. And if people don't feel good about themselves, that's when they start to abuse themselves. And of course, it's not just the abuse from food or anything. You know, there's the alcohol abuse, there's the drug abuse, because these things give them this temporary lift that makes them feel that little bit better. But it's temporary, but it leads to other illnesses and other harms to their health. So we've got to make sure that early detection means that actually there will be less disfigurement. But prevention is always better than the cure.
The skin is very complex with several different layers, each with its own role. When a tumour forms, often it can be like an iceberg with only a small area visible on the surface, but with substantially more area affected by cancerous cells below. It's this iceberg that causes most surprise to the patient after surgery, when they realise how much has had to be cut out to ensure all of the cancer has been removed and only healthy cells remain. The most common areas for skin cancer are on the back, neck and sometimes the back of the legs. You may have found that it is hard to apply sun cream to these areas.
Treatment can range from cryotherapy to using topical creams that work almost like chemotherapy type creams, to having it surgically removed if need be, and then we follow the UK guidelines of removal depending on which cancer it is, to what our margins are, because if you remove a melanoma, for instance, it needs to be a 2mm margin on your initial removal. If it comes back positive, they will then go back and remove another centimetre around the whole area to make sure that if there's any satellite cells that they are removed as well, to give you the highest chance. And we're also looking at the depth. If the depth is less than 2mm, you've got a chance that you're going to live a long life and that's not going to kill you. The deeper down into the skin it goes, the more chance it's got to metastasize.
These are baby steps. This is the first step, and there's a lot more that can be done, and I'm sure will be done as the ball starts rolling. And like I said, we have Wendy here, who's talked a lot about her own experience, who was negligent, who wanted the tan, who thought it was really cool, and she developed the skin cancer, was operated upon, has had the stitches, and she is here to show you how she feels so strongly about it.
I wish I'd known then what I know now. Malignant melanoma is the 5th most common cancer in the UK and the 10th most common cancer here in Gibraltar. The effect of sun exposure can be devastating, as I am well aware. A suntan is never safe. It's a sign that your skin is trying to protect itself from further damage. Apply sunscreen factor 30+ regularly. Seek shade, especially between 11 AM and 3 PM. Wear wide rim hats. Use UV protective sunglasses. Wear loose long sleeve clothing. Take extra care with children. Get to know your moles and check them out at least once a month. If you find a new mole or notice any changes to the size, shape or colour of an existing mole or patch of skin, don't delay, get it checked out by your GP. Prevention is better than cure. Beauty is only skin deep. Skin cancer is life-changing. Sunburn can double your risk of skin cancer. You have a choice. Please make the right one.
So, I mean, it is debilitating, it works on your physical and psychological state of mind, and it's not something that anybody would want to have. So, yeah, it's important to set the awareness.
The thing is, if you protect yourself at work, it allows you to have that healthy lifestyle when you're older.
For longevity.
Yeah. And one of the nice things is that people have long-term plans. They realise that if they plan for now, to prevent now, they're preventing in the future. And actually it's an investment, because if we are preventing now, we're not going to be paying the price in the future, because to treat cancer and pay the price for treating cancer is a huge expense on any nation. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, it's a huge expense on your budget. Now here's the reason why people should be involved and why people should get aware. They're paying taxes now, so they're helping to pay for other people who've been hurt. But in the future, as the population gets bigger and bigger, there'll be more and more of these happening. Do we want to impose that sort of budgetary penalty on our grandchildren? Should they be paying for our illnesses that we could have prevented now? If we have that short-term payout now for the long-term investment, it helps the country, it helps the individuals, and it helps communities. And actually individuals benefit the most because they have healthier elderly lifestyles, which means that they can enjoy their later years instead of having to suffer. And too many of them suffer in silence at the moment as well.